managing your expectations.
Sorry about that. I just remembered to record it.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, so good morning again. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Your Job Search, Managing Your Expectations, Managing Your Journey. Good to see you all here this morning. It's quite a small group. We are expecting a few more, but it's a strange market. You may have noticed there's headlines everywhere that there's loads of jobs around, and you look at them and you think, well, hold on a minute, I'm not seeing this. I saw a statistic this morning that there's 1.5 applicants for each job. That seems really low, 1.5 applicants, but you're probably not finding that because, of course, that's an average across all industries. That doesn't mean that when you go for a job, there's not going to be a whole long list of people going for those jobs. So we thought we would run a webinar which looks at the challenges of applying for work and sometimes the gap between what you have to offer and what the organisation is looking for, and how to match those two together. And we're going to be looking at your journey of looking for a job, and we're also going to be looking at how you manage how we manage your expectations and the employer's expectations and get those to match. Good to see a lot of familiar faces. I know I've met a lot of you on a one-to-one basis and new ones as well. I'm Melanie Pearl and I am the Employment Programmes Manager at Work Avenue and also an employment advisor as well. So I look after a lot of our programmes, events like this, running events, looking at the events that we run and saying, right, okay, are they actually addressing what's going on in the market and helping people who are looking for work at the moment? And hence a very topical webinar today that we're running, which is sort of really in response to the way the market is looking right now and helping you into work. And I'm also an employment advisor, which means I meet a lot of you, I've met a lot of you, and I would like to meet more of you on a one-to-one basis. And what we do is we work with you on a bespoke basis to look at what you're looking for. What's the next stage of your career? Where are you looking to go? And let's help you to get there. Let's give you the tools to get there, and let's look at what's stopping you from moving to the next rung on the ladder or wherever it is that you want to be. My background is HR. I've been in HR for quite a long time. Started at Legal and General, worked in local government. I was the HR director at the United Synagogue. And then for the last 10 years, I've run my own HR and career coaching consultancy. And I do that alongside working at Work Avenue now. So I work at Work Avenue half the week, and about half the week I'm working with employers and helping them to recruit. So kind of sitting on both sides of the desk, so to speak, in terms of helping you really to look what's an employer really looking for. I'm joined today by Richard Linden, who many of you all have met, another employment advisor who works with us. We have a third employment advisor, Hannah Dehaan, who's not here today, but Richard and I will be running this, and just hand over to Richard to just introduce yourself, Richard.
And then Mel, I'll go straight into it, shall I? Yeah, from
right
there. Yes, nice to meet those of you who I haven't met before. Good to see a few familiar faces. My name's Richard. As Mel said, I'm an employment advisor at Work Avenue. I've been at Work Avenue about 4 years now, and I've probably been an employment advisor for about 7 years in total. My initial role about 10 or 12 years ago was working for a large multinational a welfare to work organisation. So we used to help all sorts of different people into work, and that's where I trained to become a careers and employment advisor. As in a very, very similar way to Mel, most of my appointments are one-to-one. As she said, it's a bespoke service for you. And I spend a lot of my time helping clients with becoming more job ready, okay, which means having an effective CV, cover letter, being able to apply for jobs, knowing where to look for jobs, and interview skills and networking, and really all the things that are going to help you into work. I also obviously get involved in the workshops, the webinars such as this one, various other workshops along some of the lines that I've mentioned about being job ready. So that's my role at Work Avenue. I'm going to go straight into the webinar, the content of it. And actually, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is what my job is, effectively helping people to become more job ready. So let me just share the slides. Hopefully everyone can see that. If you can't, please obviously let me know, but you should be able to see that. Right, so let's launch into it then. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is managing your journey, and really this is from the very first moment you think about job searching until hopefully you've got a job. And obviously, look, everyone's got their own methods, you know, but I don't know how many of you it's your first time looking for work, but even if it isn't, I'm sure you've got your ideas about how you job search and what you do. And I suppose this is really for me to sort of help you think around the subject, and hopefully some of the material will help you improve your abilities when you're job searching. Right, so first and foremost, before you can even really start looking for work, we always recommend having a really good CV and cover letter first. That's your first step to make sure that your CV and cover letter are good. Worst case scenario, I mean, I've seen it many a time, you found a job to apply for and then you spend days or weeks working on your CV and cover letter and you miss the deadline. So obviously the first thing to do is to have a good CV and cover letter. We can obviously help you with that. We've got a whole raft of different templates. So you can always ask us to send you through a template based on the type of jobs that you're looking for. So we've got templates across all industries. And I think it's really important, rather than just piecing together a CV and just writing a cover letter, I think in this day and age, I think it's very important to have an elegant, a contemporary, modern looking CV. It can make all the difference, I think, when you're applying for jobs, and especially as it's your first impression that an employer gets of you. You want it to be all sparkly and nice, and you know, you want to come across as employable as possible. So that's very much the first step. And we always say that you should match the CV and cover letter to the job you're applying for. Now, we do a 2.5-hour workshop on this, so I'm not going to really do it justice in a couple of minutes. But if you remember one thing, it's when you look at the job advert, when you look at the job description or the person specification, you want to then look at your CV and see a clear match from your skills and experience to that job. So you know a CV is good if you look through it. You know a cover letter is good as well, is if you look through it and you can really see a clear reason for why that employer should interview you and hopefully hire you. So that's a really good indication of whether you've got a good CV or cover letter. Moving on, obviously, once you've got the CV and cover letter, the next part of your journey is knowing where to look for work. And you know, there's millions of different websites out there. They won't all be effective. So you have to try, obviously, what works for you. You know it's effective if you get an interview from it. Now, generally, I mean, myself and Mel and Hannah, we meet hundreds and hundreds of people. And generally speaking, most people will say that they use websites like Total Jobs, Indeed, LinkedIn, these kind of massive recruitment sites. And the reason they use them, and I'm sure you're all familiar, is because they're right up the top of Google. And they're the first thing that you come to. You know, if you type into Google sales manager London or administrator London, you're gonna get these websites at the top. Unfortunately, that doesn't mean that they're the best. With each of those websites, they get thousands upon thousands of hits an hour. So actually, you're always up against lots and lots of other candidates. So actually, we suggest at Work Avenue having more of a bespoke job search, going for smaller websites as well. You know, things like Work Avenue's jobs board. You know, if a job you like on our website, the chances are there's not going to be hundreds of people applying for it. So you stand a much better chance. Likewise, something like Everywhere K, okay, or smaller recruitment sites. We also think, you know, we've seen good experiences come from the Facebook groups as well. So, you know, London Jewish jobs, for example, or jobs in Hertfordshire, or working from home jobs, those type of Facebook groups as well. So really what I'm trying to say is be really creative with your job search. Don't just go for the big websites. Go for the smaller ones. Go for what works, okay? And also go direct onto the company's website. So if you do see a job on Indeed or Total Jobs or whatever, rather than immediately applying, see if you can find the actual job advertised on the website, okay, of the company that's hiring. Not always possible, but if you can do it, it gives you a better edge. Less people would have gone through that route. Okay, so
sorry to interrupt. Can I just say that
please,
if you have any questions as we go along, then put them in the chat, and we will see them in the chat. You'll find at the bottom of the screen for anybody who doesn't know. Sometimes at the top, and write them in the chat, and we'll cover them either as we go along if it's relevant, or at the end of each session. And you'll also get an opportunity to ask questions at the end as well. Thanks, Richard.
Brilliant, thanks, Mel. Yeah, absolutely. So the next thing I thought was important we want to talk about is how many jobs you're applying for. Now, I have countless appointments with people that start off by saying, it's really bad out there, I'm really struggling, I'm not getting any interviews. It happens a lot, and it's sad when I hear it. But sometimes when I actually ask how many jobs they've been applying for, they might say, oh, I've only applied for 2 jobs and they've been looking for 3 months. Only just happened yesterday, actually. So you need to be realistic, okay? You need to apply for the right amount of jobs. And no one's saying you have to apply for, you know, there's the other end of the spectrum. You don't have to apply for 30 jobs a week or 50 or 100 jobs a week. It is about quality, okay? So you have to apply for the jobs well. You know, I'd much rather someone spend a couple of hours applying for a job than just clicking, you know, automatic apply on LinkedIn, because it's much more important to get a good CV, cover letter that's really been well thought out. But that doesn't mean that you only need to apply for one job and then just sit back and wait for the employer to come back to you, okay? It's really important that you have, well, actually, you can see my point there, quality or quantity or both. You need to have some quantity as well, okay? So if you're not applying for enough jobs, it usually means that you're either not looking in the right places, or you're perhaps being too fussy. So I think it's really important to review that. It's very hard to say what the right number is, okay, because it really depends on you. I mean, if you're applying for a job that's quite unusual, you know, that not many people do, then you probably won't find a whole load of them to apply for. Whereas if you're applying for a job like customer service assistant or administrator or receptionist, then you should find a lot of jobs to apply for. So it's not the same for everyone, but you need to make sure you're applying for a good enough quantity of jobs, because no matter how good you are, no matter how good your CV is, you're not always going to hear back from the employer. So you need to make sure you apply for enough so that you can get some interviews, okay? And that brings me on to the next slide, which is networking. We always say, and you know, a bespoke approach to job applications is really important. Don't just rely on applying for jobs, okay? Sometimes it's enough, and very often it is enough. You know, we hear of plenty of people that just apply for jobs and get them, but there's a reason why. There's a statistic, over 70% of jobs that are found come through networking. There's a reason why that's a very high number, okay? And that's because it works, okay? And lots and lots of people, we do a whole workshop on how to network. Lots and lots of people come back to us and say, oh yeah, my brother told me about a job at this company, or my sister told me about a job at that company, or I bumped into an ex-colleague of mine and I'm now working back at my old company. There's a reason why we hear lots of stories like that, and that's because networking works, okay? So the big advice I can give you, LinkedIn, which hasn't been popular and around for years, is one really useful tool. Connect with people on LinkedIn. Again, I do a whole workshop on this, 2.5 hours. So I think the next one is the 4th of November. So feel free to book yourself on that and I'll show you how to do it. But speak to people, go to networking events. LinkedIn, funnily enough, has got actual networking events on there. You've got places like websites like Eventbrite or what's the other one called? Event or Meetup. Places where you can go to networking events. But so I would recommend it. Look, it's not going to work for everyone, okay? But if you can do it, I really would recommend doing it. And really just scour your network and speak to tell people that you're looking for work, have a chat with people, and you're going to improve your chances, I think, of getting a job. So
just to add that there is also a networking workshop, which is just before.
Oh, sorry,
that. No, not at all. No. It's not because I run it, but no. There is a networking workshop on the 28th of October. So where we look at networking, and particularly because a lot of people don't find that it comes naturally. So we look at networking and help you to look at actually who you could be networking with and some techniques and strategies for networking better. So that comes just before the LinkedIn. So you might want to attend both.
And actually, that's a really good order to do the networking workshop first and then the LinkedIn workshop, so you can put into practice some of what you've learned in the networking workshop. So that's a good order. Okay, so just to come on really to my last point here on your journey into work. Obviously, once you've done your CV, once you've applied for jobs, once you've done your networking, hopefully you're going to get some interviews. So people often skip this step. They think to themselves, great, I've got an interview, I'm one step closer to getting a job. But actually, this is a really important step. If you don't prepare properly for an interview, then you waste a potential good opportunity to get a job. Usually people do several interviews before they get a job offer, but many a time we hear about people on their very first interview actually getting a job offer. Okay, so it's really important to prepare as much as you possibly can. Again, we run a workshop on this, but that's not enough on its own. I always recommend, one of my biggest tips I give to clients is to write down all the questions you've ever been asked in an interview, okay? Or if you haven't had an interview in a long time, go online, type into Google, administrator interview questions, and you'll find loads of different resources on there with example questions. Write down all the questions that you've been asked, and underneath each one, write down how you would answer that question, okay? And I've often had clients email me that document, and I've had a look through and assessed how well I think you're answering the questions. But the great thing about doing that is it's almost like your revision before an interview. It gives you an opportunity to practice, okay, so that you cement it within your mind how you're going to answer these questions. And one more great thing about that, the way the subconscious mind works, when you write down your answers to these questions, your subconscious mind is continually thinking of better answers. So you might write something down, you might practice it for a few days, and then you might think, actually, I've got a much better example of that. So it's an ongoing document that keeps evolving. And I think it's a really, really good way to prepare for an interview. Right, so I think those were the main things I wanted to talk about. The only other thing to say, obviously, is to make sure you research the organisation, to make sure you use any sort of tools you can, if you know someone that works there, or if you can speak to someone that knows more about the company than you. Do everything you can, really do everything you can. Have a mock interview, which for those of you that don't know, we also offer that service at Work Avenue. And hopefully that will help improve your journey to getting into work. So I'll hand over, and I don't know if you've got anything to add, Mel, or if you want to go straight into the next bit.
Yeah, no, I will move straight in. I guess maybe just now is a good time to just tell you also that we have a jobs board, which a lot of you may have seen. At the moment, we have about 90 jobs on there, so that there's a lot of jobs out. Well, we know that there's a lot of jobs out there, and it's finding the ones that are right for you. But we do have about 90 jobs on there at the moment, and we have our job placements manager, Yael Solomons, and job placements assistant Melissa, who many of you may have spoken to or met, who will constantly try and place people into those jobs. And the value of going through our jobs board is that we have a really good relationship with most of the employers who advertise or put their jobs on our jobs board, and we will put in a recommendation for you as well. So do come via us if you see any of those jobs that interest you, and let us know, and we will do that for you. So it's going back to what Richard was saying about, these big sites like Indeed and so on. Yes, we use them, we all use them, but use some of the smaller ones because it's more personal and you get more of a recommendation on those as well. So I want to move on to talking about managing your expectations and really aligning those to the expectations of the employer, because I think that's often where things go wrong, I suppose, for want of a better word. Where you actually think that you're right for a job, and you go along and you're considered to be underqualified or overqualified. And very often we go along, particularly when you feel that you're overqualified, you go along for an interview and you think, I can get this, it's easy, I can do all of this. And then the employer doesn't think so. And it's being able to align your skills to the way you present your skills and experience to what they're looking for. So just to start by looking at being underqualified for a job. So if you're underqualified, which in some ways is the easier one because you can do something about it, but we'll look at both and look at ways of dealing with both. So if you're underqualified, you absolutely want to tailor your CV to the job. So looking, what's the job about? And don't forget, you only really need to be able to do about 70% of a job. Yes, there's some absolute essentials, and just take with a pinch of salt some of the things that are listed as essentials. So when you look at a person's spec, sometimes you think, they put that under essential, I must have it. Now, if it's absolutely essential to the job, for example, an accountant who needs to be qualified has got to have the qualification, because that's really, if it's a qualified accountancy role, that's really important. But it isn't always important. Sorry, not everything is important within a role. So do make a judgment, do your research, and really work out, actually, could I go for this job? Could I give it a really good go? Because employers are very lucky, even in this market, if they get exactly what they want, and particularly because actually it's an applicant's market. So why they're not likely to get absolutely everything they want. And what we're seeing a lot of are very long. I'm sure you'll have noticed that a lot of job descriptions are very long at the moment. They're very detailed, and they expect you to do everything. And that's because there have been some job cuts, and jobs have been merged together, and reorganisations, and they've sort of merged them into one. But actually they can't get everything. So do look at it, ask our help, to look and say, right, okay, is this something that I could actually apply for or not? And then put in a strong profile. The profile at the top of your CV is really important. It's the first thing that an employer sees when they get your CV. So make that strong, make it aligned to the job. So much as we work with you to have a template CV, or maybe more than one template CV, depending on what you're doing, it's really important that you do actually tailor that to the job that you're going for. So have a look at what the job description is saying, what the person specification is saying, and align it, and use some of their words. There's no problem with plagiarism where it comes to CVs and application forms. Use some of their words. You have to substantiate them. You have to show how you've got the skills and experience, but you can use their words. And think about any gaps. Don't think, oh, I hope they won't notice that I've got this little gap. Talk about how you're going to fill it, particularly when you go for an interview. Think if they've asked for Excel, for example, good, strong Excel skills, and you're thinking, my Excel skills are a little bit rusty, maybe do a short course before you go, and think about how your Excel skills are now and what you could do about them. You know, could you undertake training? Is it absolutely essential to the job, first of all? And if it is, what could you do about it? So if they say, how are your Excel skills? You've got an answer. You're not thinking, oh, I was really hoping they wouldn't ask that one. I'll just kind of shove it under the table. So have an answer. And it might be that you say, well, I actually haven't used Excel for a couple of years, but I do remember how to, and you tell them what you can do. It's always important to tell them what you can do more than what you can't do. So tell them what you can do and say, well, actually, a few years ago, I hadn't used a database for some time, and then I started in my last job, and I took time to learn how to use that particular database. I researched and worked on it in my own time. I sat next to somebody who helped me to explain it, and I picked it up very quickly, and I'm a quick learner. So you've given an example that says I can learn fast. Do demonstrate ambition and interest in the organisation. That's really important, because they will feel that it's worth training you and developing you if you're really interested in them. Moving on, Richard, to overqualified. If you're overqualified, again, tailor your CV to the job, and this is much harder, because if you've got many years of experience, you're proud of that. That's that's part of who you are. You've 20 years or so perhaps experience somewhere. You really feel you want to tell the world about it, and I get that. I understand that, but the employer might not want to see it. So be careful about what you put on. Now, you have to be honest, obviously, on a CV, but you don't have to tell them your whole life story. And this is where people often don't produce as good a CV as they could for a particular job, is that you think of it as your life story. I'm going to put everything that I've ever done and hope that they'll they'll see that I could do the job because I can do so much more. And employers don't work like that. They're looking and they're saying, well, how do you actually fill the job that I've got to fill here? And what skills and experience does this person have? And if they've actually got too much, then I'm thinking, as an employer, they're going to be a bit bored. Or they're going to want my job, which of course is always a concern. So you need to demonstrate that actually you're really happy to do what they've asked you to do. So you'll want to change the language somewhat. So I've got an example over here of, instead of spearheaded a new HR system, you might say help manage the transition to a new HR system. So you were perhaps the leader at the time, but you're going to talk about help manage because you still helped your team manage it. Excuse me. So do think about the language that you use and take out some of the things that are less relevant. Remove some of your old jobs, perhaps some additional qualifications that don't need to be there. I know it's hard to do. It's not easy. You're proud of those things. But if it's not going to get you the job, then in this case, put on there what's most relevant to the job that you're going for. And make your CV ageless. When people look at CVs, their sometimes subconscious bias or unconscious bias comes in, and you have somebody who's perhaps younger than you going through CVs, who has in mind perhaps the person who did the job last time, who was excellent, and they look at your CV and they think, right, and they see something on there that happened in 1990. And they think, well, okay, if that happened in, if they did that in 1990, no, they'll be out of date. And this is where people have stereotypes. They have stereotypical views that are deeply embedded. And what happens is if they see something in 1990, they assume you're not up to date. So that means they won't be good on the computer. Actually, you might be amazing on the computer, but they've just decided, they put you into the stereotypical box that says you're over a certain age, you put 1990 on your CV, and therefore you're not capable, you're not very good on with IT. So if you are good at IT, make sure that shines brightly on your CV, that's demonstrated. If you're not, get yourself trained if it's important for the job you're going for, and it's important for many jobs, so we can help you to work out how to do that. Get some volunteering work. Voluntary work is a very good way of gaining some experience in something that you're not very experienced in. But don't put old dates on. So I would take off old jobs. You can also look at using a functional format CV. So this is something that we go through on our CV workshop. So the standard CV is the reverse chronological one that we all know, where you start with your most current job and you go down to the ones that you did a long time ago. And what often happens with the chronological CV, if you've been working for a long time, is that you'll see you might have had a really good career when you were a few years ago, and as you've got sort of a little bit older, perhaps it's changed. Not for everybody, but you know, very few CVs go in a straight line, but a lot of them go like this. They go, you know, they wobble from time to time to different things. And what you want to do is you want to emphasize the skills that matter for the job. And so a functional format does that. It's a skills-based CV. So you might pick out 3 main skills, and in each section you'll talk about what makes you right for the job. So you talk about the things that you've done that make you right for the job, and that way they see the skills before they see your career history. It doesn't work for everybody. It's not always the first port of call. If a reverse chronological CV works well for you and it's working okay, use it. This is where it's not, that we would then use the functional CV. Moving on to the next slide, please, Richard. Thank you. And then explain why you're looking for a step down. So they want to know, they want to know that you're not going to be bored after a very short period of time, that you're not going to be starting to look around, that you know, or you're not just taking this job because there's nothing else around at the moment that interests you. So really demonstrate an interest in the company and the job. That means doing your research and being able to tell them why you're interested in the role. In your cover letter, you might talk about you should absolutely talk about your strong interest in that role and why you're interested in working for that organisation and for the job. And that it's the fact that it's the right time in your career. That's probably more something for interviews. Probably quite hard to put that into a cover letter, although sometimes it can work. It depends on what your reason is for doing it. You might also talk about the work. A lot of people don't like management, don't want the responsibility of managing people, even if they've done it in the past. So you might talk about what you are really interested in. You know, I've done the management side, but I really want to be back involved in the work of the organisation. That's what interests me. Important no-nos. Don't appear lazy. So sometimes we say, my current role is just too tiring, too long hours. I really, I'm at the time of my life now where I want a less stressful role. Try and avoid words like that. Yes, it might be I'm at the time of my life now when I want to move to this kind of role, but don't tell them you're tired or the hours are too long or, I don't want stress, because all roles have an element of that, and they might sort of, these words can be remembered very, very easily. And also don't appear desperate. So, I'll take anything at the moment, that kind of thing. You don't want to say anything like that, because as soon as you say that, they assume that means that you are not going to stay very long. So just be a little bit careful about the language. Moving on to the next slide, please, Richard. Or I can see there's quite a lot in the chat. Is there anything I should be covering now?
Nothing. Well, I think we can just leave it till the end, because we'll have time for questions, I think, at the end. Yeah. Fine.
Lovely. Thank you. And then I want to cover talking about salary and salary expectations, because this is a conversation that I often have with clients, is about salary. And what often happens is that we tend to think about what we need rather than what the job will pay. So I can't take a job for less than 40,000 a year because I've got my mortgage to pay, and I've got, and I've got expenses, and it's just not going to work. But actually, quite honestly, the employer doesn't care about your living expenses. They're not interested. They just want to fill a job. So the truth is, a lower level job is going to pay a lower level salary. And that's tough to consider when you need the money. But if you've not been working for a while and you're looking for work, it's hard, it's tough to take that drop, but it's thinking, well, okay, I'll take a lower salary because it's better than not having a salary. And perhaps it's a stepping stone to going somewhere else if you want to get back to the salary you were on. But if the salary is really important to you and you have to earn that salary, then you have to think how you're going to do it. And it's not going to be by going for a lower level role, but having more experience. That might give you a little bit more money, but it's not going to give you a lot more, the fact that you've got more experience, if it's not relevant to the job. So do research salary levels and work out what the salary level is for the job. Don't talk about salary in interviews at all. That's a big no-no. You talk about salary once you've actually got the job, but also understand that you might be able to negotiate a bit more once you've got the job, but you're possibly not going to be able to negotiate what you were on before. And it's a mindset. It's quite hard to be thinking, all right, okay, well, I was on 40,000, but now I have to, or maybe more, I was on 50,000, and now I have to be earning 25,000. It is hard. It's hard to get your head around that. But sometimes if you're thinking, I'm at the time of my life when I want a lower level role, that means I also have to be at the time of my life where I want a lower level salary as well. So work out what the job will pay, not what you need. And then think about sort of also whether your skills are up to date. Are they up to date enough for the job you're going for? If not, can you supplement them with training or voluntary work? And voluntary roles are clearly easier to get because they're not paying you than a paid role. And they're quite a good way of getting experience somewhere. So and you can put, if you haven't worked recently or you haven't got the right skills at the top of your CV, if you volunteer, you can actually put that voluntary work right at the top of your CV. You don't have to even put it under a volunteering section if you don't want to, unless it's relevant to do so, because you've still done the work. The only difference is you're not paid for it. So you've got skills there. And the value of volunteering is that you can say, well, last week, actually, I can tell you about an Excel spreadsheet that I put together. And it's current, and that's really important. And we can talk to you about volunteering websites, ways of getting volunteering work. There's the Jewish Volunteering Network is one, jvn.org.uk. Reach Volunteering is a sort of secular equivalent, and that's a really good one as well. That's actually how I got into career guidance, is that I volunteered half a day a week in career guidance. It was when I was working as just started up my own business, and it was a way for me to get out, but also to gain a new skill that was. So I talk about it from a point of recommendation, really, from personal experience. So just moving on to questions now. Thank you.
Yeah, Mel, thanks for that. Now, someone has asked a question about salary, so I suppose we should quickly answer that question first, seeing as you've just been speaking about it. Fernanda asks what to say if the recruiter asks for our salary expectations very early on in the process. So, in other words, you can't leave it till the last minute.
Yeah. So I'd always try and avoid it if you can. So I think you want to talk about your interest in the role. So, I'm really interested in the role. It's and you pick out some of the things that you like about the role. The idea of working in the insurance sector, really interests me because, and I saw on your website, something like that. So if you can, then do that and say, salary is, I expect to be paid a reasonable salary for the role. or the market rate for the role, but actually my interest overrides all of that. So try that. But sometimes they'll say, yeah, but what do you really want to work? So make sure you've done your research, that you know roughly what the market's paying. And then what I would do is I would try and give a range. So if you've got to give a salary at that point, give them a range. So, I was expecting to earn in the range of 25 to 30,000. Because if you say, if the role's paying around that, and you say 25,000, and they were planning to pay you 30, they're not going to give you 30 if you've said 25 in the interview, so you've talked yourself out of it. If you say 30 and they've only got 25, then they've just disregarded you as part of the interview process, because they're saying, well, actually, he wants more money. So give yourself a range, and then you've got some room for manoeuvre. And then the best time to negotiate salary is when they want you, when you've got the job. I've sat on, I don't know how many interview panels I've sat on in my time, and every time the person you want is the person you really want. And you might have a second best, but that person is absolutely second best, and you will try your hardest to get that person in, as long as you know they want the job. So when you're negotiating salary and you've got the job, don't sort of go back and say, well, I only want, I didn't expect that, I can't possibly take it unless it's 25,000. Go back and tell them how excited you are. I'm really looking forward to working with you. But I do remember we talked about salary, and I expressed an interest in a range, and I can see you've offered at the bottom of that. I was hoping it would be more than that. So it's how you say it rather than what you're saying.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Becky asked, this was when you were speaking at the beginning, Mel, that she asked, there aren't many businesses willing to train. They are looking for those that can hit the ground running. Now, I mean, I've had a moment or so to mull over it, so I don't know if you want me to kind of comment on that first, and then you can add anything. I'm not sure that's so true. I mean, typically, the bigger companies usually have a kind of an induction period or a training process when you start. Yes, they obviously want to get their money's worth out of you, and yes, they want you to really hit the ground running, but they should be willing to train you at the start. Sometimes we hear this with much smaller companies that perhaps aren't so organized. And I think if that's the case, and if you do start a job and they haven't got much training in place, then you can obviously mention this to them. You can obviously ask people you're working with to sort of give you some pointers and some guidance. And you can also do a little bit of extra work. Nothing wrong in the first few weeks or month spending a few hours sort of outside of your job, or staying half an hour later before you leave, just so that you can get up to speed in the start of the job. I know it's not ideal, but that's kind of my take on it. I don't know if you've got anything to add there, Mel.
Yeah, I mean, really sort of my feelings are exactly the same, that I think that, you can do some of it yourself, and you can ask, and there can be a mix. So hi, Becky. I think just to add that to that, if you're seeing that the same things keep cropping up again and again, so you're looking for jobs and you keep on seeing something on there that you're not trained in, really look into it, discuss it with us. Is there a way of you getting trained in it? What can you say in relation to that? Because I think that often happens, is that you see the same thing over and over again. It's like, what do I do about it? And see whether that's possible. And if it's not possible, then we have to start looking somewhere else and saying, right, okay, well, that's not the right role for me, because that's when it can take you a lot longer to look for a job than it needs to.
Yeah. Okay. And then moving on, Paul asked, when you were talking about the functional CV, Paul asked, are you saying take off all the job dates? You weren't saying that, were you?
No, I wasn't. And actually, thank you for bringing that up, because that is often a misconception. So no, don't take off your job dates. People want to see those, but take off some jobs that happened a very long time ago. So the ones that you've got on that are more recent, have them on there, have any voluntary work on there that you've done that's relevant, but have those dates. Just think about whether you want to really go back to sort of when you started work, if you've been working for a very long time. Take the dates off some qualifications. So qualifications that happened a long time ago, you could take the dates off those. O-levels are now called GCSEs. It's okay to put GCSEs on there so that people don't see that you're, the age that you are. I did O-levels too, and my CV talks about GCSEs, just so people don't know. If the organisation, the institution where you did your qualification has changed name, put the new name on. That's okay. It's just so that they recognise who they are. So that's those are little tricks to make your CV ageless without, whilst still telling the truth.
Yeah. Okay. So there was another comment on the subject of training when you start, but I'm not sure we have to necessarily talk about that. Jules has said most companies will not train. They generally have a handover a couple of days. Yeah, I don't know if there's much to add on that. Really, every company is different. I suppose possibly when you get offered the job, that could be a good opportunity. You don't really want to ask about training and handover periods and things like that during the interview process. But once you've actually been offered the job, when you're talking about things like salary and benefits and things like that, when they really want you, then you could ask a little bit about handover and have a discussion about that then before it actually starts. And make sure that obviously that you're going to be up to speed on everything. Fernanda asks, how long after the hiring process do businesses usually expect you to start working? Well, it's different every time. I mean, most companies will expect someone to have a 1 month notice period, or in some cases more, 2 months or 3 months. But I suppose if you're out of work, then usually you can, if you want to start earlier, there may be the option to do that. But don't forget, if someone else is leaving, then they've probably also had to give their month's notice for you to start the job. So look, it's different every time. It's never always quite clear cut. So there's not a one-stop shop answer to that question.
What I would just add to that is, again, not to sort of show all your cards until the end. So if you know you've got a holiday booked and you can't start for a few weeks, there's no need to talk about that until you've actually got the job. So just kind of keep that to yourself. I think we're all, very often we're all so honest. We want to tell the employers everything, but make sure it's at the right time.
Yeah. Okay. So Becky has asked, what if you're looking to reignite your career in a past industry, extending a long period of time? I mean, I've seen that quite a bit in clients. For example, I met a lady the other day that was a dispensing optician. She'd done it 10 years ago or more, and then had a family and then wanted to go back into that. And I actually thought, that was a very real possibility for her, because she did the training, she did it. Obviously I suggested she goes back over all her notes, try and contact the people that she knew at the time, to try and get back into it. But that's a very real possibility. It's not just because you haven't done something for many years, it doesn't mean that you can't get back into it. But it also doesn't mean that you can just apply for jobs and walk into the role. Like Mel was saying, if you can do some voluntary work, if it's admin or customer service or something like that, and you're able to do some voluntary work or something to help you get back in the swing, to be able to tell employers, well, I haven't done it for 10 years or 20 years, but look at what I've done. I've done a course, I've done voluntary work, I'm really up to speed. I can walk, I can go straight back into that role. Yeah. Okay. And then Jules has asked, as far as hiring after the interview is concerned, I was offered a job and asked to start 2 days later. They said if I couldn't, they were going to have to make an offer to someone else. Oh, blimey.
I took it.
Blimey, yeah.
I took it.
That's an unusual thing to say. You don't really get that very often, Jules.
I was surprising.
Yeah.
Was it a temporary role?
Well, They said it was our temp to perm. It actually lasted 6 weeks.
Right.
And then they told me that they couldn't keep me on, and I said why, and they said, well, legally we don't have to tell you. I said no, but morally you should. And they just said that it was legit, nothing to do with me at all. It was the logistics of the company. But I did feel a bit used.
Yeah.
With a temporary job, I suppose that's different, isn't it? Because,
but you know, really, you should be nicer to people, shouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, but most employers are, you know, but there's always some who are not.
Yeah. In our experiences, most employers wouldn't do that, but
No.
you know, these things happen. If they're desperate, they're really understaffed, and it's a temporary job, and they want you to start immediately, then and they've got someone else that can start immediately, you can kind of see their point of view. But there's no excuse for not being completely nice and and friendly and all that about it. So I don't know. Joel Goodman's asked, does IR35 affect how we should market ourselves? Sort of IR35. I don't know, Mel, being the HR, you probably know more about this than me, but I mean, what would you say?
I mean, I'm guessing, Joel, you might want to tell us more, but I'm guessing it's because are you looking to work on a self-employed basis? Is that, or not work on a self-employed basis? Do you want to just tell us, Joel, what you meant by that?
Well, it was always another option that one made that could make one's self more attractive to clients effectively, because we were cheaper. They didn't have to put us on the books.
Yes.
Now that loophole has been really closed, because as of April of this year, I think it was, the HMRC really clamping down on it, and then that effectively makes contractors the contracting option less or on the same level as being an employee, which means
yes, so I'm
more expensive.
Yes, so what I would say, just for the last couple of minutes, is IR35 doesn't mean you can't have anyone who's self-employed. It just means that if they're really an employee, the employers have got to be much more careful than that. So I think if you're applying speculatively to an organisation, where speculatively is when the organisation hasn't advertised, but you're applying to them and you're offering your services, then you might say, I'm flexible in terms of how I work, whether I can work, whether I work on a regular basis or on an ad hoc self-employed basis. You might do that. You might offer them that flexibility so that they can decide. IR35 just means they have to make sure that if they take you on, then they take you on sort of they do it properly. So if you're actually employed, then they'd have to do it properly. So we're coming to the end of our time, so we better stop there. I think we've gone through all the questions, have we, Richard?
Yeah, we've gone through all the questions. Yeah, perfect timing, actually. Okay. Yeah.
Lovely. So I hope you found that helpful in picking out really sort of the struggles, I think, that a lot of us have in looking for work, even though we hear that there's so many jobs around. Do come and see us individually, because we can talk about you as an individual and really help you to find the right roles for you, and also gear your CV accordingly, your application forms, look at training that you might need to help you to get into the right role. We run a whole variety of workshops. Do have a look on our website at those. This webinar has been recorded and will be on our website in the next day or two. And all the other webinars that we've run, which sort of started right at the beginning of lockdown, which was obviously 2 years ago, are all recorded on our website. So do have a look at those. Look out for more. Just to tell you, we have an event coming up called Defining Your Second Career on the 6th of November. Sorry, not 6th, 10th of November, 9:15 to 1:30 on Zoom. a whole number of different speakers speaking about how to go about finding, changing your career, and particularly if you're looking to change sector, but for any reason at all. So do have a look on our website and register for that, or get in touch with Richard or I. Richard, you just want to put the last slide on, because we've got the contact details on there.
Oh, yes, yes.
You can have a look at those. Right, okay, so those are our contact details for Richard and I, and also a number for booking, and our workshops. So just to say thank you very much for coming. I hope it's been helpful, and please get in touch. Looking forward to helping you further, getting you into work. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Bye.